they tend to be very transactional business models or pyramid schemey type business models. So I learned a lot. Through these different entrepreneurial endeavors when I was a kid, but I can't say that I would like to hang my hat on the psychic hotline concept from way back.
Elizabeth, welcome to Life Science Solutions. So glad to have you.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to our conversation today. We're gonna touch on a little bit, some of your background. I'm excited. I got to enjoy over the last week and a half. I got to enjoy the Giant's Ladder, and looking forward to diving into that. Maybe before we go there, you have a very interesting background, right, in terms of kind of your professional and career development, and maybe starting out with a pretty interesting original, facet about yourself. You started your first business at the age of 9. So maybe talk a little bit about, what was that like, and what were you up to as a very, very young aspiring entrepreneur?
Sure. And what's funny is I'm dating myself a little bit. This was in the 90s when I was 9. And so I don't know if I even thought of myself as an entrepreneur. I think I thought of myself as I want money to buy things that I want to buy. So when I was 9, I was given this little voice changer that I figured out I was really into electronics. So I figured out how to connect it to my phone in my bedroom and change my voice. And kind of simultaneous to this, you might remember that 900 psychic hotlines in the United States were a big deal. And so I got a 900 number. I made a flyer. I put it up in my town and I advertised my psychic hotline. I think I had one call because we were open literally when I got off the school bus until my mother got home at 5 o'clock. So I think we had very limited office hours. I had one phone call the entire time and cost my mother a lot of money on her phone bill for this 900 number she did not realize that she had purchased. But I started my next business when I was 11, which was selling server space. I also had a house cleaning company that I later sold to a local house cleaning company. And a lot of these things when you're a kid, it's sort of just like a slight, maybe slightly different than a lemonade stand, but they tend to be very transactional business models or pyramid schemey type business models. So I learned a lot, through these different entrepreneurial endeavors when I was a kid, but I can't say that I would like to hang my hat on the psychic hotline concept from way back.
Yeah. Nor on the attempting to yell as to sell a younger sibling tidbit, right? So there's the first book reference for our conversation.
I was going to say, you did read the book, Chris.
Folks will have to read it to catch that one, but that was a very humorous story there in the middle. It's interesting because from there you really took your professional career and touched a lot of different areas of technology, right? I mean, you worked in kind of early scientific, like clinical models, right? You worked quite a bit in offshore wind power production, right? And getting political buy-in and things like that. You did some work in diagnostics. How did that path evolve, right? And I have a background of exclusively in life sciences as a career, right? And coming from a pretty stereotypical, engineering background and education. So how did you kind of flow through all that? And then how did it land you, where you are today?
Sure. So I had this amazing opportunity to hear Dr. Habib Dagher at the UMaine Advanced Composite Center speak. I was in my MBA program at another university at the time, but I was a UMaine grad and kind of clued into a lot of the really interesting tech coming out of this particular laboratory. I say laboratory, but really they were almost like an incubator for spin-out companies and a lot of tech transfer work that the University of Maine was doing. They have tons of patents to their name, their various research leaders' names. So I heard him talk about this offshore wind program, and I was pretty passionate at that point about climate change. I was probably 21 or 22, right, fresh in my MBA program. And I was really inspired by this message that there is more to founding companies, right, than just having good technology. That there's an economic development imperative, especially when these technologies are rooted in academia or our national labs. And so his vision was very aligned to Thomas Friedman's at the time. He had recently published Hot, Flat, and Crowded, basically about how all these different countries were dealing with climate change and using technology to their advantage. And Habib had this vision of electrifying the state of Maine's power grid, making it into a smart grid, and using one of our most abundant offshore resources, which is deep water offshore wind. And so I went up to him after the talk and said, "Hey, what are you going to do about the fishermen who are going to hate this?" And he said, "I have no idea. Do you want to work on that?" And so I had my first job, but of course, we weren't funded at that time for that program. This was still just sort of his pie in the sky idea. So I worked on a number of R&D programs as a project manager while we were trying to get funding. We were working nights and weekends. The light in his office was on at 3 a.m. because we'd be working on proposals, while we were trying to fund the offshore wind program. So I got to work on some really cool projects for NASA, some early cellulistic nanofibers based programs. How do we apply these new materials to infrastructure applications kind of across the board? So that was really my first foray into R&D creating jobs, technology transfer. And I realized after 6 years of managing the offshore wind program, we eventually did get it funded, and it became the largest still to date R&D program in the state of Maine. We raised over $200 million in funding and started a public-private consortium called the Deep Sea Wind Program with 160 different member organizations. Just a very, very successful technology program. And, through all of that, I realized that my passion really is in helping companies spin out of labs to not just rely on STTR funding, but to capture their seed and Series A investors. And now, and that's really who I wrote the Giants Ladder for, these scientists who they have a great idea, but they're constantly sort of talking about their technology from the bench as opposed to the future and how to kind of connect technology to strategic outcomes for their investors. And so that's really where High Touch got its start and where I got my start as well. I started the first iteration of High Touch Group during the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act funded research kind of boom. When that money ran out, once again, sort of like the psychic hotline having terrible hours, my business model, I realized, was a little bit brittle. And so I went to work. I knew the executive director for the Jackson Laboratory, which is a big biotechnology incubator space with several Nobel laureates on its faculty in Bar Harbor, Maine. And he needed somebody to support strategic initiatives for their more business-oriented side of the business. And while there, I got to help launch like the first commercial CRISPR program and all sorts of other really interesting technology. And I relaunched High Touch about 6 years after working for Jax because, again, I feel really strongly about making sure that good technology gets out into the world and doesn't just die at the patent stage.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because we work with so many startup founders, right? And frequently pretty early in their journey now exclusively from a technical perspective, right? Not from kind of a marketing and not really directly from a fundraising. And as we're going to move out of an SBIR or an STTR kind of arrangement, was it from seeing this kind of same cycle over and over in technologies, or was there really the aha moment, right? Because it sounds like, I mean, you heard the wind example, right? This deep water wind, and you immediately asked the question of, okay, how are you going to convince, right? Or maybe how are you going to persuade, right? To use some of your language, these other impacted individuals, right? Because you're going to have a tourism angle, intuitively that you're going to have to overcome there as well. And we see so much like on the pitch front, right, that the best pitches have this mix, in my opinion, right, of altruism, where we're bringing in patient benefit, right, and this is our backbone as a company, right. Our tagline is because patients deserve better, but then also this, hey, there's an economic viability to this, right, and that's going to be important. So was it from seeing it over and over, or was it really this kind of aha jump, right, that then led you to realize, hey, this there's this real need for something like High Touch Group and for something like Giants Ladder to be out there in the world.
Yeah, so my earliest aha was definitely with Habib, going from I had literally just finished this Tom Friedman book, and I had been ruminating on how can I make more of a difference. I'm young, I don't really have a network. I'm not somebody who can just, I went to the University of Maine. Don't have, these huge labs at Harvard or MIT, some of these other resources, right? So how do I get involved in something? So that was an aha moment of, oh, there is a way to get involved even if you're early in your career. So that was sort of the early career aha. The high touch group transition aha was really that scientists aren't trained to communicate to anybody really outside of peer-reviewed journals. They might in one, graduate level course, they might take a course on research methods to support thesis writing and things like that. They might have some journal articles that they need to have published in order to meet certain degree requirements or to keep their research stipends going. But that's not the same thing as being able to pitch and receive money on the flip side. So we talk a lot about I was spending a lot of time coaching these early stage founders in how to communicate, which is really the basis of good marketing, right?
Yep.
And then with high touch over the years, we found more and more that our sweet spot tends to be companies that have been funded. So they've gotten their Series A and they're trying to, maybe they're still pre-revenue though. And so they're trying to make that transition to revenue, come out of stealth mode, or maybe they're positioning for merger or acquisition. Maybe they were kind of a mom and pop research tools company or services side company that's looking at the next stage of growth. How do we grow this beyond our founding team? And so that's really become our sweet spot more and more. And it makes sense because a lot of startups fail, and having a lot of churn in your organization as an agency manager can be difficult to manage, as I'm sure you understand. And so the Giants Ladder was really written for those scientists who I don't get to spend as much time with day to day anymore, but who still very much need the support. And they're really, besides my book, there are two great books that I make every single new high touch team member read by Hamid Ghanadon, a friend of mine. There really aren't many books on this topic. And the National Science Foundation stopped teaching the communicating science course a number of years ago, which was very popular. So I feel like there's really this gap in helping scientists truly commercialize their technologies.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's fascinating because you talk about having to do all this or recognizing and doing all this mentoring, right, for folks so many times. And as someone who essentially has built my entire career on having a baseline of technical knowledge and then just being able to talk and communicate with people and kind of go from there, right? So I'm not a technical deep dive guy by basis anymore. And so that's really interesting to observe that named. Thanks for tuning in to Life Science Solutions, presented by Kymanox and produced by WalkWest. If today's conversation with Elizabeth sparked new ideas for your organization, check out her book, The Giants Ladder, and learn more at hightouch.group. For more insights like this, subscribe and follow Life Science Solutions wherever you get your podcast. We'll see you next time as we continue exploring what it takes to bring life science innovation to life, because patients deserve better.